before you leave these portals to meet less fortunate mortals, there's just one final message I would give to you.
Well, the research question was related about how to improve work environments, okay? We know that pressure environments are not good for workers because they reduce performance and productivity. Actually, we implemented different experiments in which we created different pressure environments, and we found that pressure environments are not good. We should revise the way in which we are designing work environments.
So one of the first studies that I did was on participation on decision making. Here we found that involving employees on the decision process can be beneficial. However, we also found that in order to do that, you have to be ready to listen to them, because if not, these mechanisms might backfire.
You all have learned reliance on the sacred teachings of science.
In our last experiment, we tried to compare two different strategies of sharing common resources through different generations. After creating a random and anonymous group of 5 people, they were distributed through different generations in the first condition, and they were in the same generation for the other condition. If more of the resource, of the common resource, was extracted in the same generation, the resource was destroyed. We observed that groups that were split in different generations behaved more sustainable in order to let their teammates use the common resources and win money.
So I hope through life you never will decline, in spite of Philistine defiance, to do what all good scientists do.
In this experiment, we wanted to see if there are stereotypes about a gender perception of wine, where there are male or female wines. We gave people these 6 wines to taste from, and we gave them to choose from 15 names, and we found that female names were significantly more likely to be given to acid, and male names were significantly more likely to be given to tannic wines.
Nikos and I are currently working on an experiment about wine experts. So we defined an experimental protocol that allows us to assess how experts' opinion can influence people's perception of wine quality. Of course, we plan to run this experiment with different type of people with different level of knowledge to see if this influence is only effective on people with low knowledge or also on people with high knowledge in wines.
Experiment, make it your motto day and night. Experiment, and it will lead you to the light.
More and more companies are implementing tools to meet stakeholders' expectations. It's also a way to improve their brand image towards customers. What is the impact of corporate social responsibility, quality and environmental approaches for companies? Do you think these kind of approaches are well perceived by customers? Do you think the communication about these actions has an impact? We decided to make an experiment with a beauty context to answer these questions.
For several years now, I run experiments about the effect of the strategic environment. I created some new variants of the beauty contest games in which actions can be either substitutes or complements. And we run experiments with several thousand of people, and we noticed that individuals are closer to the rational expectation equilibrium when they play in a situation of strategic substitutability.
The apple on the top of the tree is never too high to achieve. So take an example from Eve. Experiment.
Hi. In one of my previous field experiments, 140 participants in Bayonne played the trust game using the European currency euro as well as the French Basque local currency Oshko.
Information system research has a long history of technology acceptance. Organizations sometimes develop technologies for months that finally are just not used. Experimental economy takes us to the next level by helping us to anticipate real-world behaviors at the conception stage.
Be curious, though interfering friends may frown. Get furious at each attempt to hold you down.
In a paper published in Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, we found that boys underperformed girls when a reading task was labeled as a test, whereas they outperformed girls when the same task was labeled as a game. This experiment showed that stereotype threat explains gender gap in reading, favoring schoolgirls.
We use experimental economics in the topics of corporate governance and especially to better understand the selection of board members. So we asked to some groups of people what would be, according to you, the best board composition for your board of directors, just for your own choice. And we asked the other what would be the composition that would be, according to you, the closest to the average choice made by the others. So we try to test the impact of the social norm. And in the result that we have, we bring evidence that the social norm is much more conservative, with fewer women, with older people on board. So that might be the impact of stereotypes here in the selection of board members.
If this advice you always employ, the future can offer you infinite joy and merriment. Experiment and you'll see.
In one of my current projects, we explore the impact of nutritional logo Nutri-Score on snack choices made by the mother-child dyads. We observed that the nutritional logo Nutri-Score can constitute a lever to improve choices, but that this change induces hedonic cost, raising the question of the durability of such a behavioral change. We also observed that children made better healthy choices for their mothers than for themselves. They are more paternalistic than their mothers.
Okay, so the global idea was to discuss about crowdfunding, motivation and rationale, or to talk about the stakeholders' rationale in crowdfunding process for that. So we have launched an experiment first in Costa Rica. The idea will be to compare our result with French contexts and so on, to identify what's common in terms of culture proximity, managerial proximity or geographic proximity between lenders, projects and entrepreneurs in crowdfunding campaign.
Be curious, though interfering friends may frown. Get furious at each attempt to hold you down.
So I did an experiment that tried to measure the moral cost of lying. And so the way I did this is I let people get money by lying. So I made them lie in order to get the money, and then I allowed them to make up for it by giving some back. And then to test to see what the lie itself did, I took the same amounts of money and gave it to people who didn't have to lie to get it, to see whether they gave away a smaller amount than those who had to lie to get the money.
In one of my experiments, I tested the impact of conviviality on the food well-being. I am interested in the conceptual model that helps structuring the figurative space of conviviality in its perceptible and symbolic dimensions, and isolating the variables conditioning its deployment. The conviviality is designed and perceived as a factor positively impacting food well-being.
Imagine I'm with a colleague at the front of the coffee machine, and I decide to pay his coffee, and he decides to pay my coffee. Does it make sense? Maybe not, maybe yes, because we felt both an increase in our subjective well-being. We decided to make an experiment with a dictator game where the two players are both detector and players at the same time to investigate this question.
If this advice you always employ, the future can offer you infinite joy and merriment. Experiment and you'll see.